What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Robbie Cassidy, and today we're going to discuss some of the myths and misconceptions around back pain. So before I start off, I want to talk just a small bit about my program that's out at the minute, and it's my foundational mobility program. And it's available on my website. It's basically a 6-week program that's scaled, so it has beginner and advanced versions of an exercise, or an intermediate and advanced versions of exercises. And it basically works on tightness and limitations around the back, the hips, and the shoulders. So it's building a foundational base for your mobility so you can actually improve and progress on after that. And it gives you a good idea of different exercises that you can use. And because it's scaled, once you get through your first 6 weeks, if you want to, you can continue on and run through it again at the advanced level for the next 6 weeks after that. So it incorporates strength, mobility, range of motion exercises, and breathing all together. And on top of that, there's a few informational videos that talks also on sleep and hydration and general movement and how to incorporate mobility into your day as well. So as I said, it's available on my website at the moment, and that's the foundational mobility program. Now, back pain is one that you see so commonly, and there's so many people that suffer from some type of back pain. Now, it's a general word, obviously, because it could be lower back pain, it could be thoracic pain, it could be pain into your shoulder, so people would count that as back pain, or it could actually be a fairly severe thing like a vertebral fracture, or it could just be muscular. All right, and then there's lots of other, just within those ranges, there's a lot of other things that play into it as well, including your lifestyle factors like your sleep and your stress and your hydration and your mood and all that. So it all plays into it. And I've done a podcast on pain before, and I go into a lot more detail on what causes it, what contributes to it, and different ways to take control of it. And if you get a better understanding of what pain is and what causes it, you can take care of yourself a lot better, because to think that hurt always means harm, so to think that you, just because something's hurting you, an injury would lead you down the wrong path, and that there's a lot more that contributes to that. As I said, those lifestyle factors, and I say that because your pain is generated in your nervous system or your brain, so it takes a lot of things into account, your previous experience and all that, and your beliefs of what you feel it is, and it meshes them all together, and it gives you a certain level of pain. So really quick example would be like if you were walking in your hallway at home and you stood on a piece of Lego and you could see it, it wouldn't be too bad. But if you were walking at night time and you can't see it and then you step on it, you can just imagine how severe that pain is. And it can be so sharp, so fast, but you've done the same thing. So one of them, you've noticed what the danger was or what the threat was, and the other one, you couldn't see it. So your body perceives it as it must be worse because you can't see it, and then you get a lot more pain for that. So that's a really, really quick example of what it is, or what you have to take into account when pain is earned. And as I said, what actually contributes to that pain at a certain time. So it could be different day to day, and it's important to know that. So before I go any further, I want to just talk on, as I said, I'm going to discuss back pain, but I want to talk specifically right now some of the beliefs and some of the fears that can affect people, and that can in the long term can have quite an effect on your health, because you stop doing a lot of activities because of the pain that you're feeling. So a few things like beliefs wise are things you have to take into account. People that are suffering from back pain, obviously it can be fairly severe when you get it, in that you can feel it and it can feel like there's nothing more severe in the world. So what is playing into that? Well, a lot of stuff that is, family history is one that can't be ignored at all, and it's a really important one, in that if your father or your mother had back pain, or if your grandmother had back pain, you're going to feel like you're more predisposed to having back pain, and you may be more predisposed to like say getting pain around that area, but it doesn't mean that you're set. It doesn't mean it's a death sentence and that you'll definitely get it. Okay, so family history is a huge one, and a belief that your father had it and that's the reason that you have it is going to affect a lot of people. Now, other things would be like previous experience, and this comes back to family history as well, in that if you have previously had a friend who's had fairly severe back pain, or if you had a colleague at work, or if you, let's say, if your family even has had back pain, and depending on what their reaction was to that pain, it's going to determine what you feel that you should feel. Okay, so it'll determine how severe that pain will be, because it was bad for them, so it must be bad for you. All right, so it's important to take that into account, and how those beliefs will actually affect your experience. Okay, and the reason I want to touch on all these at the start is that a lot of the time, and I'll go through them in a bit more detail, but a lot of the time, like a back spasm itself can be made a lot more severe through this catastrophizing mindset. So, and that basically is when something happens, you make it out to be as worse, or you make it out in your own head as worse as it could possibly be. So you feel like there is nothing else in the world as bad as what you're feeling at the moment. Okay, and you feel that if you're getting pain in your back, it must be because you've, let's say, put a disc out and it's touching on a nerve, or you've tore a muscle, or you've done something severe to your back. And that's what catastrophizing is it's that you're actually thinking whatever it is the worst of what it could be. So it's really, you have to watch that. Now it's going to be more common in people who would in general be anxious, or you'd have it in like people that would be prone to depression, stuff like that. Nervous, I know nervous and anxious is very similar, probably the same, but you'll have it in that population more because they're more likely to feel negative emotion, or more likely to code negative emotion, or any emotion, or any experience I should say, as negative. And that's the problem, is if you're coding all your experiences as negative, then you're going to feel, when you get a small bit of pain in your back, you're going to feel a lot more severe. Now, moving on from that itself, I wanted to go into and talk a small bit about what makes a back spasm so severe, and why are they so bad, and why are people who have back spasms, I've very commonly heard people who get a back spasm go into bed for 3 days, 2 to 3 days, and wait till it goes away. Now, in my experience and in looking at the research that, I genuinely couldn't think of a worse way to react to having a back spasm, in that if you do go into bed for your 2 to 3 days, that is not, obviously it's not in any way, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone, because you're reducing your activity significantly, which is going to cause your pain to go up severely. So it's only going to get worse then. But what I wanted to touch on is basically what makes it so severe itself. And you have to think about where the placement, and in society, okay, society is playing a lot into this, and your experience with other people and that. And in society, back pain is the worst thing you can get at the moment, especially in our society, in terms of like muscular injuries, or a not long-term condition, obviously, because there's things a lot worse than that, but muscular injuries and the amount of people that suffer from it. And a lot of people are protective of their back, and they won't bend down to pick stuff up, and they won't do a lot of stuff because they feel if they injure their back, they're done then. So I feel that this has started in society initially, and in people, I can see how it would have come about, is because of the placement of your spinal cord. And an actual back injury itself, like if you actually had a spinal cord injury, is a absolutely detrimental injury. It's a catastrophic injury in that you will lose use of your legs, or you could lose use of your arms and legs. It's such a severe injury that you always have to take that into account, why people have certain beliefs around back pain. And I feel a lot of it stems back to that idea of that if you do actually injure your spinal cord, there's a high probability that you'll be disabled. So I think that that's kind of where it stems from initially, that type of belief. And I feel that belief itself feeds into how society look at back pain, and how they look at how you should react to back pain. And that's where even that idea of going into bed for 3 days, how that thought would come up, is that's the only thing you could do, because you have to give it time to heal and give it time to relax down. So that in itself is going to be a huge threat on the system. If you feel that you're getting a bit of a spasm in your back, and then you're catastrophizing and saying that, you might not say that, oh, it's my spinal cord, but just you're associating your spinal cord with your back in general, that's going to cause your reaction, let's say, to the spasm. You're going to react a lot irrationally, I suppose you could say. So you're going to catch your back, and you're going to squeeze, and you're going to hold your breath, and you're going to stand up as straight as you can, and you're going to be leaning over to one side, really holding it and tensing as hard as you can. And by doing that, It's the same as if you got a hamstring cramp. If you did it to a hamstring cramp, the hamstring cramp would get worse if you just tensed it as hard as you could while it's already cramping. So that's why it's really important to notice when it is coming on what you can do to help it relax down. And it could just be something simple like just getting yourself moving a small bit more. But what I'm saying is that the reason these back spasms are so severe, so much more severe than any other spasm in the body, like as I just said, a foot cramp is the same thing. Hamstring cramp is the same thing. They're all the same thing. It's just the fact that it's in your back and you feel that it's going to be a lot worse because back pain is so common. That's what makes it worse. So really important to watch what your reaction is if you do get a spasm. To try relax yourself, let yourself know that everything's all right. It is a muscle spasm and it will pass with time, but you need to help relax the body as best you can and help or get yourself moving just nice and easy again. Okay, so really quickly, why is a back spasm so severe? I feel it comes back to the placement of the spinal cord and people's idea of a spinal cord injury and what that does, and then also then society's idea stemming coming up one level from that of what back pain is and how severe back pain is and how debilitating it can be. So I think that's why, not that I think, but looking at the research, that is why back spasms are so severe. And people's reaction then to that when it actually comes on, when they actually catch it and stand up straight and tense as hard as they can and think, oh my God, this is the worst thing that could happen. And as I said, I bring it back to what's the difference between a back tear or an injury in your back, like a muscle injury, and a hamstring injury. And on a physiological level, there's no difference at all. On a psychological level, there's a big difference in terms of the amount of emphasis that people put on a back injury. Because it can be coined under the same term as a spinal cord injury and a spine, let's say, or a back injury. It can be coined under the same coat. So you could easily mix the two of them up, or you could hear someone describing someone's condition based or with the same terms. And when that happens, you have to understand that language is going to affect your beliefs and it's going to affect how you look at stuff. And if you're going to be grouping those together all the time, then you can see how it will get so much worse. So that's the first one I wanted to touch on. Now, second one I want to go into is really, really common one that you hear a lot of time is that you don't bend your back to pick something up. This is another one that plays into the beliefs that we just talked about before, about having that idea that you shouldn't bend down and pick something up and you should always squat down and pick something up. Then there would be no need for us to have a spinal column, really. It'd make a lot more sense to have like a femur running up, like your leg bone running straight up through your back, and have all the spinal cords running through that, if that was the way we were supposed to be. But your back is made to bend, and it's strong. It's probably one of the strongest joints because there's so many involved and so many muscles involved in your body, and it's extremely robust. It's so very unlikely that you would even like fracture a lot of the bones in your back. It can be difficult, and it want to be a fair bang to do it. And obviously it's possible, but it want to be a fair bang. You're more likely to fracture a lot of other joints first, or a lot of other bones first. So the idea that bending and lifting is bad for your back is completely overplayed. In that it's definitely not bad for your back. It's actually extremely good for your back, and movement is good for your back because it thrives off of movement. Now, here's where the mix-up is there is a higher chance of muscle injury if you're lifting heavy loads, but it would be the exact same as if you went lifting heavy loads like on a hamstring curl without warming up, and it'd be the exact same as if you went benching without warming up and you try pushing something really heavy. You're going to be at high risk of injury anyway. So that's the same goes for that. If you go lifting something heavy without warming up properly, or you're not ready to go for it, and it's a maximal lift, you're going to be at more of a risk of injury anyway. And that's across the board. So it's not specifically your back and, oh, you shouldn't be lifting with your back. You need to be smart about what you're doing. Now, there's the other thing that it does come back to, that if there's like, you need to watch out for some severe signs. So if you went lifting something really, really heavy and you bent your back to lift it, obviously you can get more power by bending your leg, or by squatting down and then lifting up. So similar to a deadlift position, you can get more power that way, and that's why you do it that way. Or you can get more strength, or you can lift a higher load if you're working in a biomechanically optimal position. Now, but that doesn't mean that all the time you have to lift in that position. If you drop a pen on the floor, you should be bending down and picking it up. You should be bending down and picking a school bag up off the ground. Really, it's up to around about 30 kilos that you should, well, in and around about, I'm not going to say 30 kilos for everybody, but in a general sense, that's usually okay to lift off the ground by bending your back, usually. Now, if you do it or really sharp, and if you're doing movements, say if you're lifting loads that are extremely heavy and you're doing it really sharply, you could be at risk of let's say bulging a disc onto a spine or onto your spinal cord, which would be fairly sore, and it can cause a thing called cardiac equina. So that's looking into the medical side of things now. It's less likely to happen, but it's always there. It's always a possibility. So I'm not going to write that off at all. But you have to look out for the severe signs when it happens. And that's, you'd have bilateral tingling. So you'd have numbness and tingling going through both of your legs. You'd feel very sick at times. And then you can have loss of control of your bowels as well. So there's a lot of other things that play into that. And that usually happens. Now it can happen with anyone over any, like even with small loads. But that's just, there's a lot of things playing into that, like fatigue and muscle strength and all that. But in a general sense, bending and lifting is good for your back. So lifting stuff off the ground, like the Jefferson curl, is an excellent exercise for your back, because you are folding through each vertebrae and you're lifting a nice weight and you're not doing anything too sharp and you're nice controlled movement. So you need to be making yourself as robust as possible, is really what I would be saying. So is it bad for your back to bend and lift? No, it's good for your back. As long as the load is right, it's not massively heavy load, and that you're not doing it when you're fatigued, or you're not overusing it in terms of like you're doing it hundreds and hundreds of times. Then if you do that with any joint in the body, you're obviously at higher risk of injury. So the same rules apply to your back as they do for any other joint in the body generally. Moving on from the lifting thing, I wanted to touch on MRIs. And this is another one that I get so often, in terms of someone will send me an MRI of results of an MRI, and they'll say, what do you think of that? And I'll have to kind of go through what it is or what it means or what it says and with them. And it happens like with clients a lot. They'll send me on something and say, I had this MRI from a couple of years ago, and I could nearly tell them what the MRI says before it comes in. And I'll say, I'll just before they do send it, I'll be like, does it say something like degenerative disc disease? Does it say something like bulging discs? Because if it does say that can be like scary for a lot of people. And if you look at that and you see that a radiographer has put that down and said that there's something wrong in your back from your perspective, or depending on what way your doctor tells you or your physio tells you, what way you pick it up, and what way you've, as I say, bringing it back to previous experience, what other people were like as well, people that you know that may have had the same condition and what condition they were in when they were like that, then all that plays into what pain you're going to feel. So MRIs in a general sense are not effective for back pain, general back pain, let's say, or non-specific back pain. They are effective for the likes of cardiac equina and stuff like that, very effective, and for fractures, all that, perfect. But for non-specific back pain, which is not really an area, you don't really know where it is, you kind of know it's a general area around your back, then MRIs are not an effective method for diagnosing the injury. And it's because the fact that they all say, nearly all of them say DDD or degenerative disc disease. A lot of them are going to say bulging discs. Okay, and degenerative disc disease is an age-related change. So it's going to be in absolutely everybody, or nearly everybody, over the age of, let's say, 30, 35. Bulging discs are so common that 1 in 3 people over the age of 30 years old have a bulging disc, with no pain, I should say. So they are so common as well. This is why you can see that I'm not for MRIs at all, and you can, even in the medical field now, people are moving away from it as a diagnosis because of the fact that it can bring up, or it can highlight issues that aren't actually directly related to the problem, but that people can link onto, and then that becomes a problem from them thereafter. And it's the fact that people would pick this up wrong or cipher wrong, and they can actually significantly increase the level of back pain that they have, or the degree of it, or the severity of it, just from because the MRI changes their belief, and depending on the way that somebody told them of what it means can completely change their belief. So even seeing that yourself, and you have to think about it as well. So you you have to be empathetic as well. I can't just be throwing out stats in here and saying that everyone should know this and this is easy, it is easy for everybody, but it's not, because there's a lot of people that really struggle with back pain. So what I would say is jump into the shoes of somebody who does get an MRI result and who does see that it says degenerative disc disease on it. Now, as I said, it's going to be in nearly every result, or everyone, depending on what that person's like. If they are prone to catastrophizing events anyway, they're going to be more likely to pick that up the worst way it could be picked up, which would be that their back is degenerating and that they're in bad condition, and they're going to be only become worse and worse as they get older, because obviously they feel that there's nothing they can do for it. So it's not something you want to look at. So I would describe it's the same as having wrinkles or having grey hair. It's just an age-related change. It doesn't mean that you are limited by it in any way, shape or form. You just have to take into account that as you get older, your body changes. And depending on your level of activity and your level of fitness and what you do with your body and how well you take care of yourself is going to be the main determining factors in how your life will play out, obviously. So that's why we want to move away from MRIs as best we can. And if you're listening to this today and you have had an MRI and you have had these such results, let's say that degenerative disc disease and bulging disc, if you've had those, it's okay to bring it to, even if you want to your physio or your doctor, and discuss it with them or talk to them. Or if you want to, you can send me a message as well through Instagram, or you can email me, or you can contact me through LinkedIn. And we can talk about it a bit more if you have any questions on it, because it can be difficult for people to get over that fact that a bulging disc seems like it's so much more severe. And then they might not say, well, if that's not what it is, what is the cause of my pain? And this is where it comes into the fact that you need to be careful with how you go approach it, because there's a lot of things that contribute to pain, and depending on what their sensitivity is like around certain areas, that's also going to contribute to it. So that's why I was saying that podcast that I did on pain, I went into a lot more detail and I discussed pain and what it is and what contributes to it and why we have it and all that in that podcast. So that was number 3 or 4, I think. It's called The Pain Experience. Definitely go back and check that out if you are interested in it. But what I would do with a client is I'd look at their lifestyle and what they're doing, and then I'd look at their movements limitations and see what they're like mobility wise. Even if it's through a consultation or an online consultation, I'll get them to do a few movements if they need to, or check it out. But I'll be assessing your beliefs as well. That's a big thing that I'll be trying to do, to see what you're believing or what you believe is wrong, because that does determine a lot of the time, or it's definitely associated. You get a better understanding of what the actual cause is from assessing beliefs. So it's a big thing that I do. I always assess them just to see what people are at and what they're like and what they're thinking or what they're feeling. And then I look at other things like their sleep and their relationships with people, their social situation at the moment. I will look at their work situation as well, their stress, see what they're doing, because all this plays into it, and it plays into the level of pain, and it plays into when the pain kicks up. And because of that, you need to assess all these things, and you need to break it down. You need to kind of be empathetic with people and help them understand that it's not the pain that they're feeling doesn't always mean that they're doing damage to themselves. It could be related to something else. So it's something that I always try to get across. And another thing as well that I really push is that the body is basically a healing and adaptation machine, and that it does, once given enough recovery time, it's always trying to heal itself and it's always trying to get stronger. So that's why you need to, that's a whole, let's say, that continuum of stress and adaptation. And stress isn't always a bad thing. Stress is can be a nice signal for the body to improve. So it doesn't always mean that there's something going wrong, but it does over time, or chronic stress can obviously cause breakdown. But if you look at the other side of that, look at the recovery side of it, that's when the body's building itself back up and getting stronger. So even though you might have a bulging disc, let's say 3 years ago, you might have had a bulging disc on, let's say at L5 or L4, you could say, or L3 or wherever you want to say. If you had a bulging disc at that point, then that might have been 3 years ago, but right now that could be cleared up and gone completely. So it's important not to be tied to your MRI scan and not be tied to the fact that there was an injury there before, so it must be still be there now. Okay, because as I was saying, that body is so good at healing itself. But guys, that's everything I wanted to talk about today. That's everything I wanted to discuss. I just wanted to clear up a few things around back pain and what people thought it was. or people think it is. And as I said, if you do have back pain, and if this is something that you've been struggling with for a while, definitely get in contact with me, and we can talk about it a bit more if you have any questions on what I discussed, because it might be hard hearing the first time, like in that you've had all these beliefs before, and I'm after going against a lot of them by putting that out there. So there's no problem at all if you want to get in contact and talk with me about it. I'll go through with you. So as I was saying, Instagram or LinkedIn is the best way to do that. And yeah, don't be afraid to reach out, because it is like what I'm trying to do is highlight a few things that a few misconceptions that people have, and a few myths as well. So it's across society. These aren't just one person. Like, I'm not picking on you and saying that you're believing this. This is something that's passed down. It could be passed down from your family, your friends. You could have picked it up. You could have picked it up off the street, or you could have heard it from let's say even something as high as like an orthopedic surgeon. Do you know, like this, when you hear it at that level, especially now in the fact that like it's kind of new research has come out, not new, but it's out for the last 10 or 15 years. And a lot of the surgeons at that age, and I definitely don't mean to be knocking surgeons, but a lot of them are a bit older than that in terms of they're stuck in their ways and the mechanical ways of doing things. And because of that, then they don't, it's a bit harder for them to change it up. And they wouldn't be looking at that, let's say that biopsychosocial model, or they wouldn't be looking at the other things going on in your life, like your stress and your sleep and all that. And instead, it's more of a mechanical issue. So it's not their fault either. But if it comes to them at that level, it's very hard to brush that under the carpet and say, oh, it couldn't be. It has to be what they have to be right, basically, about it. Okay. And as I said, I'm not knocking them in any way at all, but a lot of people's beliefs are generated from that, or that high authoritarian position, and because of that, it's hard to let that go, because someone who knows what they're talking about, and someone who has such a experience in it has told you that, it can be hard to let that go. So as I said, reach out, guys, if you have any questions on that. But that's everything from me today. If anyone is looking for a movement and mobility program, I just spoke about at the start, that foundational mobility program is available on my website, and I'll also be picking up more clients in the next couple of weeks. So if anyone is interested in working with me, if you've had long-term injuries and you're looking to get it cleared up, there's a huge education component to the coaching that I do. So every Monday we do a call and we discuss it, and then you have your program then for the week, and we'll have a check-in on a Thursday as well. But education is a massive part of what I do, like let's say through Instagram or through social media, and through this, hopefully you're picking up something from this, but also with my clients, we go into a small bit more detail and we dig in on different issues. So if you are interested in that, if you've had an injury that's gone on a long time and you get it cleared up, or if anything, run it by me and I'll see if I can help you out. Best way to get in contact with me there would be send me an email at mobilityshooter@gmail.com, or you can get in contact with me through Instagram or through LinkedIn. But yeah, guys, that's everything for me today. Thanks a million for listening again. Just before I dip off, if you're listening to this on iTunes, I'd love if you could rate it or leave a comment if you took anything from it and if you found it beneficial. Also, I'd love, guys, if you could share it on your story on Instagram. It's very good for getting the name out there a bit more, and getting the podcast out there, and I have a better understanding of what you like. And yeah, send it to a friend if you know anyone who would be interested. But thanks a million, guys, for listening again, and I'll chat to you all again soon. Have a good one.